because they hated knowledge and did not choose the fear of the Lord, would have none of my counsel and despised all my reproof. Hey, how's it going? We're going to start in just a couple seconds. I was just listening to a proverb. I found this. Sorry, it's almost over. All right. Sorry, I was just getting set up. I do my best to listen to a proverb every day. I know not everyone is not a particularly like religious group, but I do like proverbs because they really are just really good, like practical nuggets. And if you know me, you know that I like practical nuggets. Anyway, really good stuff. But I found this playlist, so this is really cool. It's like all of the proverbs. So if you are into that kind of thing, this is really nice. And I know that a lot of times, like I found one on, what's it called? I found them on SoundCloud, but they're so like overproduced and weird. This one's just a dude talking, which is great. So it's 9:00. Welcome. Thank you for showing up. I appreciate it. Hey, how's it going, Thomas? Oh, I see you're sharing something with me. Oh, more English, updated English. So that's one thing I really like about the ESV is that it's kind of like a updated English version too, which is great. But yeah, I'll have to check that out. Is it like video and stuff, or not video? Read. That's something I'm loving right now, is because I just, man, I like start to nod off when I read. I don't. It's just a bad quality of mine. But yeah, I'm real bad at. So today, let me pull this up. So let's go to reactjs.org hooks. That'll redirect us to the introduction of hooks. So this week I've just been exploring hooks. Thomas kind of sent me an interesting thing talking about like the different ways that people like to learn and kind of play versus consumption. And I am definitely the play type. I have to get my fingers on it, kind of bump around the edges before I understand it. So this is kind of a factor of that, which is fun. Now, yesterday, I was the last of the basic hook types. So on Monday, we did use state. On Tuesday, we did use effect. On Wednesday, we did use context. And each of these kind of like lended themselves to each other. I actually love the order that they put these in. Because use effect, like use state is really useful on its own, but then it also kind of gives value to the other ones as well. Which is, I like that they wrote them down in this order because you really need to use state to be able to use effect well in the case of like watching the window, or it's all those kind of things. Kind of keeping a reference to a subscription, whatever. So, yeah. So let's kind of dive in. So there are these additional hooks, and these are. So this is basically a kind of a slightly different use state. These are all for kind of like memoizing things, and these three are kind of these two are specializations of you use effect that opt into different scheduling, I think. And I don't even know what use imperative method is, but I don't know. Maybe we'll explore that next week. So today we're going to talk about UseReducer, which is linked to use state conceptually. They're very similar. I was very tempted to kind of hide my ignorance and do a lot of research on reducers, particularly these like kind of state action reducers. However, I decided maybe I wouldn't do that, and now we're here. I thought it'd be a little bit more fair if you were kind of in the same place as me, where you don't actually use reducers day to day. Maybe you've heard of them. Maybe years ago you explored Redux and decided that it wasn't for you, and haven't really done this kind of state reducer in a while. If that's you, I wanted to meet you I wanted to be honest about where I'm at and kind of meet you exactly in that same place. If you are familiar with reducers, you probably don't even need to watch this. Honestly, this is really just like what you've been using for a long time, except you use a slightly different syntax. It looks a lot like the use state version. Oh, shoot. You know what? Again, I did that thing where I changed my system preferences. This is going to be really hard to read at 720p. So give me a second. I'm going to switch this up. Okay. I think that might have made things look funny on the stream. So I'm going to fix that now. Okay. Everything should be bigger. Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Thomas. I was making that same same revelation. Everything should be bigger and it should be taking up the whole viewport. If it is not, if you could let me know, Thomas, that'd be great. And we will deal with that as needed. Okay, so we're on UseReducer right now, right? And it looks a lot like if you tuned into UseState or are familiar with UseState, it has this array style destructuring where it's going to give you, effectively like an array style tuple where you get the state in the first position and the updater function in the case of UseState in the second position. Now, in the case of UseReducer, it's very similar. You're going to have that array. First is the state, and the second is a dispatch function. So instead of getting a function that allows you to mutate state directly, you just have this one function that allows you to basically call it with the details of the mutation that you want to make, and then it returns a new state. So let's see. So one thing that is different from UseState is that with UseState, we just pass in the state. And with UseReducer, we need to pass in a reducer. We can define that in line. We can define it outside of that and pass it in by reference. But we'll kind of explore all those boundaries. So I'm just going to read through this because I need to read through it to understand it. And yeah, we'll go through this together. As an alternative to UseReducer, an alternative to UseState, accepts a reducer of type state action new state and returns the current state paired with a dispatch method. If you're familiar with Redux, you already know how this works. I haven't been familiar with Redux in a very long time, so I need to read this. So here's the counterexample from the used state section written to UseReducer. Okay, so we have const initial state, and there's a state object that we are holding into this reducer. So this is where we're defining that reducer, which takes state as an argument and an action as an argument. We have a switch that switches on action type. So when we send this action in, it's going to be, it looks like we're expecting it to be an object. And having a type property on that object that we'll be switching on. So we'll be calling this with objects. Let's verify that in the code. Okay, cool. So the on click is going to dispatch. It's calling this dispatch function, with an object and the property, and then an action, like the action type. Okay, cool. That all makes sense. Okay, cool. So let's see. I'll finish reading this, then I can kind of like attach it to like what I'm understanding from useState. So, okay, so we have 3 cases. We have a reset case, which just returns the initial state. Okay, cool. And then I guess that this is, I'm a little bit confused, but I'm assuming that UseReducer kind of like retains the current state, obviously, even though this reducer has no knowledge of the current state. I'm assuming that that is retained in UseReducer in the same way that it is in useState. That would make sense. So we have a reset, which returns this initial state, no problems. We have an increment, which takes the, okay, it returns a new state object. Now this is just kind of like returning an object with a similar thing. I think that we would probably, if we had a more complex state, we would probably spread out the previous state and then just that previous state and then change the key values that we're concerned with. At least that's, I think, what I've seen in the past. And then, yeah, so then decrement's just kind of the same, but with a minus. So we're pulling the state off the past in state. That, honestly, that all seems pretty sensible. Lazy initialization. UseReducer accepts an optional third argument. Okay, cool. So there's something in, let's see, where is it? This third space right here. So we have the first argument, which is to UseReducer, which is the reducer defined here in this example, the initial state defined here in this example, and then what does it say? A lazy initialization, which lives in this third part. So let's read about that for a second. UseReducer accepts an optional third argument, initial action. Oh, cool. If provided the initial action is applied during the initial render, this is useful for computing an initial state that includes values passed via props. Gotcha. So we have a counter in this example, which takes an initial count, and we can use that to initialize our reducer with that initial count. Okay, cool. This example is a little bit more complicated, so I'm going to step through this as well. Let's see. So this one has a button. How would you set up a global state reducer? Ben's asking. Set up a hook that has a UseReducer. Good question. I'm not sure. But we can play with that. Or if you want to tinker and you can post it in and we can look at it. I'm not sure yet. I'm very brand new to all of this this reducer stuff. So let's see. So this is the end of the doc on the UseReducer. So I'll just kind of finish through this and then we'll kind of move on from there. So also, hey Ben, how's it going? So we have, let's see. So we're just spitting out the count. We have a button. This button does a reset. So it has that, again, calls that reset action with a payload of initial count. Okay, so where does payload come in? Okay, gotcha. Okay. Okay. So, okay. Sorry, how many times can I say okay in a row? Okay, so this part of it's the same. It's just that they add a reset button, which sends in an action of type reset, payload initial count. So then you can reset to the initial count. Now, I think what it's demonstrating here is a certain level of parity between. So reset is just doing the same thing that you're doing to initialize your state. Oh, thanks, Ben. Cool. So that seems pretty sensible so far, at least this simple example of it. So UseReducer is usually preferable to use state when you have complex state logic that involves multiple sub values. It also lets you optimize performance for components that trigger deep updates because you can pass dispatch down instead of callbacks. Oh, interesting. So you basically just have one like bound function effectively. So that's those are good things to know. So cool. So Matt says that Tanner Lindsley did a really cool stream showing how to make context factory with a global state and split reducers, similar to how Redux does it. That's awesome. Matt, would you mind posting a link to that? I think that could be helpful to some people. And yeah, if you got it, post it in there, and I will. I think I have to approve links, maybe, but I'll try to make sure that I see that and show it. Cool. Now, they have some examples there. I did pull up the Redux docs. Sorry, I'm gonna have to scroll through here a little bit. Sorry if that makes you feel ill. Just in case, because I don't really, again, have a lot of experience with reducers, so I wanted something to copy and paste. But it looks like we're gonna have what we need to start, at least with the hooks API reference. I really love that they're doing such a good job with giving you some good starter examples. There aren't a lot of things that I feel like a beginner to React in, but reducers are definitely something that I don't have a lot of experience with. So let's just copy and paste this. I ain't too proud to copy and paste. Clean this up. So I learned something while I'm kind of doing this work. I learned something. Usually I try to do these in full screen mode so we don't see this this header. But in Chrome, in full screen mode, bizarrely enough, if I open up like a new tab, I can't, I can type in here and hit enter all day long. It won't visit URLs. It's the weirdest thing. As soon as I take it out of full screen mode, totally works, no problem. I don't know. Cool. Matt posted that in. I will show that. Awesome. Yeah. So go check that out. If you kind of have more advanced needs, I am, again, this is like the beginner version of Action Reducer stream. So if you have more, that's going to be a good place for you to go. Let's see. Okay. So I just pasted it in wholesale. Let's kind of reacquaint ourselves with the new structure that we have. So we have, again, just these examples. We have the UseReducer. So we have the initial state. This is the simpler one. So we have a reset. Apparently there was a reset before and I just overlooked it. But we have a counter. Wait, did I? I didn't do the simpler one. No, I did. So sorry. I'm so sorry. Also, all my teammates have been making fun of me for all my teammates have been making fun of me because I have this light on me and this microphone now, and I just keep it all set up because I've been doing these so regularly, and so they're like it's like radio hour with Chan every time we do stand up. Okay, so let's see, what do we have going on here? Okay, so this is our counter. We need to update our app to run our counter, and we'll fulfill that interface of initial count we'll set it to 0. UseReducer is not defined. Okay, cool. We need to pull that out. We can delete fragment because we're not using it anymore, I don't think. Yep. UseReducer. Cool. Everything. Man, that's one of my favorite things about Prettier is that everything just kind of bink, pops into place, so you know that your code is at least parsable. Okay, cool. So now we've just copy and pasted the example that we got from the docs in here. So now we're going to kind of poke at it and see what happens. So reset, it's already at 0. Presumably if I put a 10 in here, that should work. Oh, wait. Oh, I didn't spell it right. Let's see. Oh my gosh. Initial count. Okay, if I set that to 10, it should work. Okay, so obviously there's some failure in my understanding here. So only on reset, but even in that case, state that count, initial state. Do I need to put like a default here? Let's see, where is the initial state? Oh gosh, the initial state's up there. Okay, cool. I see. Okay, cool. So this has, all right. I'm starting to track now. So this one, so I don't need to pass that in because, yeah, weird. Okay. Because it's setting initial state from, so that's really fascinating. This example is kind of confusing me a little bit because it's getting initial state from here. Why are we passing in? So we're passing in the reducer. And the second argument is what? Initial state. Oh, gotcha. Okay, so we're passing in the initial state here, but it's actually, I'm so confused. Okay, so it's using this as initial state. So I don't understand what the purpose of passing in initial state in this way is. If you know, let me know, because UseReducer initial state. Yeah, see, this is really weird to me. So can I pass it in without an initial state? No. So count equals 10. Okay, cool. So count equals initial count. So that's undefined. We can set it, we can use like a default value, which would be 0. Okay, cool. That should still work. Oop, reference, initial state not found. Okay, so how do I get that as an argument? Is that like a third argument here? State. Count is not defined. Okay, so obviously not. I need the initial state because the reset action doesn't actually fire by default. Ah, gotcha. Okay. So, can't component. So my question right now is they had initial state here in the UseReducer, but I think that that's actually, I don't think that's right. It seems, or it doesn't feel right. So no, that's right. So how do I get access to the initial state in my, like, how does that work? You do not need to do it the way the docs did, but you will need, so Matt says, you don't need to do it the way the docs did, but you would need to share the initial state with both the reducer and the UseReducer. This is just an issue with Flux architecture, not the specific implementation. Okay, I see. Okay, I think I might get it. Okay, so I think, but then how, so the question is, how would I have this, and maybe this gets to Ben's question about globals, is that it seems like in this case, I would always, even though I'm taking a prop with like the default or like the initial state is 10. Wait, sorry, initial count. Okay, so I can take this as a prop, and so maybe that's the lazy thing. I guess maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. Because if I hit reset, that's going to go back to 0 because it's getting this state from this kind of like shared initial state. And so I guess it is possible that I'm just getting ahead of myself, and I need to look into that lazy thing. Pass it with the reset. Okay, cool. So, all right. So it seems like we are. It seems like immediately what I was reaching for is lazy initialization. So I'm going to try and back up a little bit and just go with this example, which it seems does need to have this kind of shared default, in which case it seems confusing to have initial state as an argument. So I think I'm going to try and do that without the initial state or initial count argument. Just for my brain to see kind of the minimum viable product here. So we're going to go back to initial state. Okay, cool. Okay, so we're adding, we're subtracting, we can go back through 0, and then we'll reset. Okay, cool. Perfect. So I was getting a little confused here by taking that initial count prop. I was expecting it to behave a little bit differently, but obviously that is where lazy initialization will come into play. So cool. Let's kind of add some things. Whoops. Whoop, whoop. Go to 10. Count. So in this case, I could just make this a static 10. Okay, so I'll add a button. Actually, let's define this all the way through. I'm gonna get my fingers on it. On click. We're gonna give it an action, which is a function where we call dispatch. Type go to 10. That's all we need there. The button text will be go to 10. Okay, so plus, minus, reset, go to 10. Okay, cool, perfect. Awesome. All right, okay, cool. I like this. This is fancy. I might actually have to introduce some reducers into my workflow now. This is awesome. Okay, cool. Let's do another one just for kicks. Let's see. What do we? So what's another like simple thing that we could do? Reset is already done. Yeah. I don't know. Okay, cool. So now that we got that, so my takeaway from this is that kind of as y'all were discussing is that we, in this case, this is not customizable in the way that I expected it to be by taking that initial count prop. Because I expected to be able to that it would be initialized, but it can't be because it's kind of initializing with this global state. So, and we're even using the global state here to initialize it. So this is all great. I am very interested now in trying to go into this lazy initialization thing, because I think, I don't know, maybe that is what I expected it to be before. So let's do that. I'm going to, instead of copy and pasting this example, I'm going to try to migrate to this example using the code. So I'm going to pull this out, and might be a little cramped here for a second. Okay, so let's just look at the number of things that need to change. So what changes in our reducer? Action type, reset. So this changes right here. So instead of referring to this initial state directly, we're going to get the payload. We're going to get the thing that we want to insert into state in the reducer. So let's say, so this is going to be count. Oh, sorry. Yeah, count. So this is going to look like all the other ones where we're going to say action dot payload. And this particular verbiage is not important, but I think it is kind of, you know, standard. Okay, more coffee. Cheers. By the way, I got this little 10-ounce hydro flask, and it's my favorite thing on the planet. It's my one cup that I use. So water, whiskey, coffee, whatever I'm drinking out of this thing. This would be an amazing ad spot. I wish Hydro Flask was paying me to say how much I love their products, but this thing is amazing. I love it. It's been my only cup for several months now, and it's stellar. Let's see. Okay, so we changed that. Now we're not actually using this, so that's a little bit backwards from the way that I usually. Actually, I'm gonna do that. Sorry. Hydro Flask got me thinking straight. Okay, so let's look at the implementation side. Yeah, brought to you by Hydro Flask. No, not brought to you by Hydro Flask. So the implementation side looks like this. So the big difference is that this reset button is going to change because we're going to set it off of the initial count that we get here. So this is the example that I was kind of expecting to land on. So from the very outside most point, it's going to look like this. The initial count is going to be, we haven't used 9 yet, so I'm going to say 9. Okay. And then as soon as this all represents that means we did our work. So first things first, we need to change our counter to take an initial count. Initial count. Let's see. So, and then we need to set up our reducer, adding that third lazy initialization argument. So, okay, so it looks like we still need to give it an initial state. That's fine. In this case, I don't necessarily care that it's like globally available, so I might just define it in line. Sorry, this all just helps me understand how things work. I'm sure that there's a reason that they did it that way. Let's see. So count is going to be 0. Okay, cool. So that works again. Let me break this up a little bit so we can see the arguments on each line. Now, The last one is that lazy initialization object. So here we're going to, this is an action. We're passing in the first action. So whereas this is just a state object, we're actually passing in like an action type that we want to be fulfilled when this initializes. So this is going to be different. We have to pass in a type. And I'm not speaking. I'm speaking to myself here. I'm trying to like process this out because I mean I'm sure that many of you already know how this works, but I'm just processing out loud. So this action type is going to be reset, and we're going to reset it with the payload. Again, this doesn't. I think this is just kind of like standard verbiage. It doesn't have to be payload if that's a weird term for you. And we're going to use our initial count that we get from props that we're structuring from props. Okay, so we're getting an error. Initial state is not defined. Perfect. That's great. That's because we deleted it from this from this module. So now we need to handle reset by taking the let's see. So we have, let's go back over here to our reference here. So reset, so we're getting the action type reset. We pass in our first action on initialization. We're going to say, we're going to return a new object with count and action.payload. Oh man, that's amazing. Killer. Okay, reset's busted though. So what do we do here? Oh, all right. So that's the reason that we have to have this initial count. So it's really interesting that you have to have that live outside. So I guess this is where, I mean, this sounds like this is the type of stuff that gets covered in that other stream that was linked. I think Matt linked it. Where is it? Yeah, so hopefully that's kind of what gets covered there. So yeah, so okay, sorry, I'm just catching up on chat. Sips from Ben's on the Hydro Flask train too. Okay, gotcha. So reset goes to nothing. So let's refresh this and see where we're at. Interesting. So reset. Oh, weird. So this gets set to nothing. So when I hit reset now, it goes to nothing. And I'm assuming because I'm not sending in the payload here. Okay, I'm going to try something. So payload. Wild. Okay. That seems fine. So reset, we would always have to give it a value, which is fine. Okay, cool. I think I'm tracking with this. I think I'm tracking with this now. Okay, so I had to change this a little bit so that like in order to make this like completely dynamic, I had to basically take this initial count. I needed to append my dispatch recall to send in a payload of initial count because it's always being expected here. I guess we could, this might be non-reducery, but I'm really curious. So instead of, in the worst case, instead of getting nothing, we could have like a default value there of 0. Again, I don't know if that is like kind of counter the way that these are supposed to be authored. But again, finding the boundaries. That's an excellent question, Andrew. I don't know who's not on the Hydro Flask train. I mean, this is the only one I could find that was like the perfect 10-ounce size for me. So I don't know. What are the other double wall stainless steel cup companies doing that they don't have a 10-ounce cup? Still warm. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So I think that we're in good shape. I kind of understand what's going on now. So or a little bit more than I did before, which was none at all. So okay. So in the example before, we needed to have, when we weren't using lazy initialization, we needed to have some type of initial state that sat outside of all of this. Lazy initialization allows us to or pass in an action right away. So it'll like initialize things with the initial count. Now, I guess this isn't. Sorry. Now I'm really kind of like just kind of moving around. So if I took this out, what would that look like? Would I still get 9? I would still get 9. Okay. Interesting. Okay. So I can keep this dynamic without using the lazy initialization. I pass in my initial count when initializing it. But then when I reset, okay, so that's the trick. So now I have a reset that expects a payload. So now I can just do reset. What is it? Payload equals 9 or initial count. Whoops, I did that wrong. Payload. Okay, cool. Let's see. Okay, so we got another. Hold on, let me show that there, Matt. Cool. Matt has a code sandbox. Let me open that up real quick. Cool. And what are you showing us here, Matt? I should have checked that out first. That could be dangerous. Okay, so reset. +1, -1, reset. Okay, so you are, let's look at this. Okay, so initial count. Okay, cool. So you're, okay, yeah, that's a way, yes, this is a way better place to do that. So having the initial count be set on the component as opposed to in the reducer, I absolutely agree that is a better place to do it. Yeah, so the rest of this is the same. Yeah, so it's doing that initial action. Okay, cool. Yep, totally agree. So let's make that change, because I think that is a vast improvement over this or 0. Thank you for that. Okay, cool. So now it's always going to be initialized with at least a 0. So let's see, initial count. So if I take this out here, we still get 0, but we didn't have to kind of hard code that into our reducer, which is very nice. Thank you, Matt. Very good. So yeah, so all this stuff works. Let's see. So it's 9:40. Man, need some water. Okay, so it's 9:43. I want to do one more thing. It might take a little bit longer than the time we have, but one thing that I kind of explored with, I think I showed you like use list, is that you could basically abstract away some of the kind of complications with kind of inserting things into a list. Now that handles kind of state. It uses use state, so it's not using these kind of immutable ways of kind of creating new states. So I was kind of curious about how I could basically append to a list using a reducer. So if you want to hang out with me, I'm gonna just kind of make that change right now to this app. So yeah, feel free to sound off. There's a little bit of a delay, so if I don't see what you're saying right away in chat, I probably will catch it momentarily. So let's see. So let's do like a to-do thing. I'm gonna start totally from scratch here. So function to do, it's called a list. On our list, we'll map over an initial list. Yeah, let's just do that for now. So we'll map over the initial list and take each item and do a list item with the item, and there. To avoid that warning, we'll put a key and we'll assume that all of these items have a different name. So we'll just use the item like that. Initial list is going to be an array of by, whoops, reload site. Okay. Milk, stream, ignorance, and sorry, just cracking myself up here. Don't worry about it. And take a nap. Sorry, saved all of those. Okay, cool. So this is, okay, so we got our to-do list. It's mapping over the initial list. So how would we then use reducer in this case? I'm going to kind of look at that. I'm actually going to comment this out so it's less visually distracting. Okay, so we're already pulling UseReducer in. So we're going to say let list and dispatch. Yeah. I wonder if we had multiple reducers, if we would do it like this. Just a question. List dispatch, UseReducer, and we're going to pass it in a reducer. I'm actually just going to define this in line. No, that seems messy. And the initial state, which will be list initial list, right? Seems consistent with what we've had up at this point. That's spelt incorrectly, and this is yet to be defined. So let's define our reducer. So we start with state, action, and a switch. I have a terrible memory, so I might have to scroll up there a bunch of times. So we take the state, we take the action, we do a switch, which I can literally never remember the syntax for. I think it looks like this. So we're going to switch on action type, and then we're going to have a case. Nope, forgot again. Case reset colon, and then we're going to return let's see, we would need to, let's just return the state that we already have. So whatever it is, whatever we have, we're just going to return that. I didn't return. Yep. And then how does that work? Do we need to like return a new object? I'm not totally sure with what the like kind of desired like effect of this is. I'm going to move this up. This is driving me crazy that every time I save, I go to the top. There we go. That's better. Let's see. Case return. Okay, cool. So let's add a reset button here. So let's take fragment. Add a button, type button. And that's going to be reset on click. Dispatch. No, list dispatch is what I called it. List dispatch. Action reset. And that's going to reset with the state. So hopefully that should do nothing. Oh. Okay, cool. It does nothing, but it doesn't break. Perfect. Okay, so let's add another button for add. Let's see. What else do I need to do today? A little bit of work. I'm going to do a little bit of work today. Okay, so that action is going to look like this. So we don't have anything yet, so we're going to add an item for it, which will be add, or let's call it append. And the payload, actually, I'm going to not use that verbiage. I think it's probably best, but just to prove to myself in my head that I don't have to, I'm going to call it stuff. Let's see. So the stuff that I want to send along with that action is a little bit of work. Okay, so now we need to implement that action. Case append return. Okay, so how does this work? So, oh, right. So I'm mapping over this initial state, not my list. So that last thing that I did wasn't going to change anything anyway. Good to know. Okay, cool. So we have some things that we need to fix now that the app is actually doing anything at all. Let's see. So now that we're getting list back, we need to give it an, okay, so we gave it an initial list. Initial list. Okay. Let's see what this list looks like. Just bumping into the walls here. Okay, cool. So I just need to pull it off of, okay, cool. So I'm calling, so let's call this list. Actually, I'm going to do this. I'm just going to destructure that out. Perfect. So I'm getting an object back, and yeah, that's right. Obviously, because we're passing an initial state object in, and then there's a key on there called list. So I'm getting that object back. And so I need to destructure list off of that. Now I'm getting the right list. So I can change my code here from initial list to list. Great. Reset. Cannot read property list of undefined. Okay, cool. So in the reset case, we need to pass in the list. So that did break, but I just missed it because I didn't have the right code. So again, so stuff, which is our payload in the world of propriety, stuff is going to be list of initial list. Cannot read undefined of list. Oh, wait. Cannot read undefined of list. Interesting. Okay, so let me see what's here. So it's getting passed in the previous, or the current state, right? So wait, hold on. I'm gonna return an empty object, and I'm gonna log state from both of these. Cannot read property list of, okay, list of undefined. Okay, so it's getting pissed at this again. So I'm gonna change this back. Okay. Oh my gosh. Oh, right. Okay. Okay. All right. I get it. Oh, now I don't have dispatch. Oh my gosh. Y'all are really seeing me struggle today. Getting your money's worth. Let's see. Okay, so we're really closing in on that time. So that destructuring, let's see. List state. Let's do that. And if we don't use it, that won't be a problem. Okay, so we're dispatching. So reset is going to dispatch this action reset, and it's going to send a stuff payload. If you see where I'm going wrong, let me know, because I'd really, I mean, are we even getting in here? Okay, so that's called. So I think, oh, duh. So that I said action there. That's where I'm running into problems. Sorry, I just got to notice that my stream, they were receiving no data. So hopefully that is not the case anymore. It looks like I'm still sending data at a pretty good clip, so who knows? We'll carry on. If you're still in chat, if you could just let me know that you're there, just so that I know that we're even still live. Just put like a wave or a high five or something in there. Otherwise, I'm going to assume that this thing just died, and that's probably better because this is shameful programming right now. Okay. Okay, cool. So we're getting that list. So I'm not sure why this wasn't working. Okay, cool. Great. So in both of these cases now, we have that previous state and we're just spreading it over a new object. I'm assuming that this stream died because either that or we've kind of past interest at this point. Anyway, I'm gonna finish up just because. So we have a list and we're kind of returning that. So what I want to do is take the previous state. So in this append version, I'm going to take the previous state and then I'm going to update the list. I'm going to take state.list. I'm going to spread that out. And then I'm going to add or append action stuff, which is where the new item lives. Oh my goodness. Okay, reset didn't work. I think because we're just spreading out the state. So if I wanted to make reset work, I'd have to, no, I am doing that. Stuff. Oh, but I'm not using it. So list is going to be stuff.initial list. Nope, action. Console log driven development. Reset. Oh, it's an object. No, that's right. Object dot stuff dot list. Oh, wow. Okay, cool. We got it working. That's not ideal. You can kind of continue to tinker with it. I think that the stream died, unfortunately, so you're probably not even hearing me. I'm talking to no one. Anyway, thanks for watching. This was extremely informative for me. I hope that it was helpful for you as well, and not things that you already knew. I learned a lot. Just namely kind of like bumping around the edges here and kind of figuring out how to kind of keep that dynamic state without having to keep it outside. Yeah, so anyway, if you want to learn more, I think that these the documentation is really good for hooks. It was a little bit weird, so I might kind of open up an issue and let's see, where is that? GitHub. I think this is for React though, and not the docs. I think there's a docs site. Let's see. Yeah. Anyway, I'll find that. I'll open up an issue to see kind of like what it is that the ideal or like what's trying to be demonstrated, and kind of communicate my experience playing with this. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. Again, if you want to be notified of more videos like this, just subscribe. And I guess there's some like type of notification dance that you do. If you subscribe to a lot of stuff, you probably know how to do it if you want to. I ain't trying to tell you what to do. I'll be doing another video tomorrow. I'm not quite sure what on. Probably maybe use callback and use memo. We'll see. I'm not entirely sure what I'll do tomorrow, but it will be hooks focused. So, you know, one of these three. So anyway, thanks for tuning in. I really appreciate the help that you gave me, and you're spending your morning with me. So y'all are awesome. Thank you. See you tomorrow.